The War Council chamber aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Dominion's Edge hummed with the quiet efficiency of absolute power. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire towered before the massive holographic display, his 4 muscular arms crossed in a gesture of supreme confidence. The blue-scaled reptilian commander was a legend throughout the galaxy. 17 star systems had fallen before his tactical brilliance in the past decade alone. Each conquest had been swift, brutal, and absolute. Now, the hologram before him showed a small, blue-green world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Earth. The very name seemed to mock him with its simplicity. This insignificant backwater planet, populated by bipedal primates who had barely achieved interstellar travel, dared to defy the Empire's expansion. "Patch me through to the human delegation," Kethvar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a being who had never known defeat. The calm officer, a nervous Altarian with trembling tentacles, quickly complied. The holographic display shifted, revealing a sterile conference room aboard the human diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Michael Rodriguez sat at the head of a polished table, flanked by his advisors. The human appeared calm, but Kethvar's enhanced senses could detect the subtle signs of fear: elevated heart rate, slight perspiration, the barely perceptible tension in his shoulders. "Human ambassador," Kethvar's voice boomed through the communication array, each word carefully chosen to maximize psychological impact. "I am Admiral Kethvar, conqueror of the Rigel sector, destroyer of the Centauri Rebellion, and commander of the 3rd Imperial Fleet. You have 72 of your Earth hours to surrender unconditionally. Your primitive vessels and crude weapons are no match for the might of the Zephyrian fleet." The Admiral gestured to his tactical display, where the pathetic human fleet was laid bare for all to see. Intelligence reports had been thorough: 12 aging cruisers of questionable design, perhaps 20 frigates and destroyers, all cobbled together with inferior technology. Their largest vessel appeared to be roughly half the size of his smallest dreadnought. Ambassador Rodriguez maintained his composure despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Behind him, through the viewport, Earth's fleet could be seen in the distance, exactly as the Empire scouts had reported. Aging hulls, outdated weapon systems, and energy signatures that screamed of technological inferiority. "Admiral Kethvar," Rodriguez replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the threat facing his species. "I respectfully request that you reconsider your position. Humanity values peace above all else, but we will not bow to tyranny, regardless of the odds we face." The alien commander's laugh was a harsh, grating sound that echoed through both command centers. His massive tail lashed behind him in amusement. "Your pathetic flotilla couldn't scratch the paint on one of our dreadnoughts, human. My fleet carries enough firepower to reduce your entire planet to molten slag within hours. 72 hours, use them wisely. Perhaps spend them praying to whatever primitive gods you worship." Several of Kethvar's officers joined in the laughter, their various alien features contorting with mirth. The idea that these soft-skinned primates could pose any meaningful resistance was absurd. The Empire's smallest battle group could have handled this situation. "You misunderstand our position," Rodriguez continued, his diplomatic training keeping his voice level. "We are not seeking conflict, but neither will we submit to slavery. There must be another way." "There is no other way," Kethvar interrupted, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture of finality. "The Empire's expansion is inevitable. Your species can either serve as willing subjects or be exterminated as obstacles. Those are your only choices." The transmission ended with a sharp click, leaving the human delegation in tense silence. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone in the room. 72 hours to either submit to eternal servitude or face complete annihilation. Rodriguez sat motionless for several long seconds, his mind racing through possibilities that all seemed to lead to the same tragic conclusion. Finally, he turned to his aide, Captain Elena Vasquez, who had been quietly monitoring other channels throughout the conversation. "Sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "Ghost Protocol is confirmed. All hidden assets are in position and awaiting your authorization." Rodriguez felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders. For 15 years, Ever since first contact had revealed the true nature of the galactic community, Earth's brightest minds had been working in absolute secrecy. The Empire's arrogance had been their greatest asset. While the aliens dismissed humanity as primitive, Earth's scientists and engineers had been preparing for this exact moment. "Then may God help us all," Rodriguez murmured, his voice carrying the weight of species-wide desperation and hope. "Signal Admiral Thompson, Operation Phantom is authorized. Let's show these bastards what happens when you underestimate humanity." The message was transmitted on quantum-encrypted channels that the Empire didn't even know existed, racing toward hidden assets scattered throughout the solar system. The die was cast. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn that humanity's apparent weakness had been their greatest deception. Deep in the asteroid belt, beyond the watchful sensors of Imperial reconnaissance ships, Admiral James Thompson received the encrypted quantum signal aboard the stealth carrier Invisible Hand. The massive vessel, disguised as a simple mining platform for over a decade, hummed with barely contained power. Thompson, a grizzled veteran of humanity's first disastrous encounter with the Empire 15 years ago, had spent every waking moment since then preparing for this inevitable confrontation. The Admiral's weathered face showed no emotion as he processed the authorization codes, but inside, his heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Operation Phantom, the culmination of humanity's greatest deception, was finally beginning. "All stations, this is Admiral Thompson," he announced across the fleet's quantum-encrypted channels, his voice carrying to hidden assets scattered throughout the solar system. "Ghost Protocol is now active. Repeat, Ghost Protocol is now active. All ships, prepare for emergence sequence. Execute on my mark." The response was immediate and breathtaking. Throughout the solar system, what the Empire had dismissed as simple mining operations, research stations, and civilian infrastructure began their incredible transformation. The asteroid mining platform Series 7 suddenly sprouted massive weapon arrays that had been concealed within its rocky exterior for years. Gun ports opened like the eyes of some enormous predator awakening from slumber. Commander David Mackenzie, captain of the stealth destroyer Shadowstrike, watched in awe as his long-range sensors detected the systematic activation of humanity's hidden fleet. His ship had been masquerading as space debris for the past 6 months, its crew living in cramped conditions while maintaining perfect stealth protocols. "Jesus Christ," Mackenzie muttered, his Scottish accent thick with amazement. "I knew we had a few hidden assets scattered around, but this is incredible." His tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, was running rapid calculations on her console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as friendly contacts materialized across her screens like stars appearing at dusk. "Sir, I'm reading contact signatures from over 300 vessels of various classes. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers. Where the hell did they all come from? How did we manage to hide something this massive?" Mackenzie smiled grimly, remembering the countless briefings he'd attended over the years, the careful compartmentalization that had kept even senior officers like himself in the dark about the full scope of the operation. 15 years of preparation, Lieutenant. 15 years of sacrifice, secrecy, and the most elaborate deception in human history. Every civilian shipyard, every research station, every mining operation, all of it was a carefully orchestrated cover. The truth was staggering in its scope and audacity. Humanity had learned harsh lessons from their first contact with the Zephyrian Empire. When the Imperial Survey Fleet had arrived at Earth 15 years earlier, they had found a species barely capable of interplanetary travel, with primitive weapons and laughably weak defenses. The Empire's casual dismissal of humanity as a potential threat had been both an insult and an opportunity. While maintaining the facade of technological inferiority, Earth's greatest minds had been working in absolute secrecy. Hidden shipyards carved into asteroids had been producing vessels using technology that leapfrogged centuries of normal development. Quantum stealth fields, gravitic manipulation drives, and weapon systems that bent the fundamental forces of physics to humanity's will. The Invisible Hand began its stately movement toward the outer solar system, followed by a fleet that officially didn't exist. Stealth frigates that could phase in and out of normal spacetime, cloaked destroyers armed with reality-warping weapons, hidden battlecruisers carrying enough firepower to level continents, and carriers loaded with fighter wings that had been training in absolute secrecy for over a decade. "Admiral," came a priority transmission from Earth Command, the voice belonging to General Patricia Walker. "Imperial Advanced Scouts are requesting permission to enter the inner system for what they're calling inspection purposes. They want to verify our defensive capabilities before the main fleet arrives." Thompson's weathered face hardened into an expression of cold steel. The Empire's arrogance knew no bounds. They actually expected humanity to allow them to conduct a pre-invasion reconnaissance of Earth's defenses. "Permission categorically denied, General," Thompson replied, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. "If they want to see what humanity is truly capable of, they can wait 48 hours like everyone else. By then, they'll have front-row seats to the greatest military surprise in galactic history." Around him, the bridge crew of the Invisible Hand worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and practiced. These men and women had volunteered for a mission that might never be acknowledged, serving aboard ships that didn't officially exist, preparing for a battle that would determine whether humanity would remain free or spend eternity in chains. The gathering storm was about to break, and the Empire had no idea what was coming for them. Admiral Kethvar reviewed the intelligence reports with the satisfaction of a predator examining wounded prey. The holographic displays surrounding his command throne showed detailed tactical analyses, fleet compositions, and strategic assessments that painted a picture of inevitable Imperial victory. His massive war room aboard the Dominion's Edge buzzed with activity as junior officers prepared for what they assumed would be a routine planetary subjugation. The Admiral's fleet of 87 vessels represented the finest military technology the Zephyrian Empire had to offer. Each dreadnought carried enough firepower to glass a continent, while his carrier groups could deploy fighter wings that had conquered entire star systems. The humans' pathetic collection of antiquated vessels wouldn't last 5 minutes against such overwhelming force. "Commander Yixtal," Kethvar addressed his intelligence officer, a spider-like alien whose multiple eyes gleamed with the confidence of absolute certainty. "Confirm once again the complete composition of the human fleet. I want no surprises when we begin the final assault." The alien's mandibles clicked rhythmically as he consulted his comprehensive data files, information gathered over months of careful reconnaissance. "Admiral, our intelligence is beyond reproach. 12 cruisers of questionable design and dubious combat effectiveness. Approximately 20 frigates and destroyers, all showing signs of aging infrastructure and outdated weapon systems. No capital ships whatsoever. No carrier groups. No orbital defense platforms of any significant threat level." Kethvar's serpentine tail lashed with anticipation behind his command throne. "And their largest vessel? Roughly half the size of our smallest dreadnought, sir. Their flagship appears to be a converted civilian vessel, hastily retrofitted with what passes for military-grade equipment among their species. Our preliminary scans suggest their heaviest weapons couldn't penetrate the shields of our escort frigates, let alone our main battle line." "Excellent." The Admiral's forearms spread wide in a gesture of supreme confidence. "And what of their planetary defenses?" Commander Yixtal's multiple eyes flickered with what passed for amusement among his species. "Minimal at best, Admiral. Some orbital platforms around their homeworld, but nothing that could pose a meaningful threat to our forces. A few weapon satellites, some communication arrays, and what appears to be a basic early warning system. Their entire defensive network could be neutralized within the first 10 minutes of engagement." What the Empire didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that every single piece of intelligence they'd gathered had been carefully crafted and fed to them by human agents who had infiltrated their information networks years ago. The aging cruisers they'd observed were actually sophisticated holographic decoys, broadcasting false energy signatures and maintaining the elaborate illusion of humanity's technological inferiority. The deception was breathtaking in its scope and audacity. For 15 years, humanity's brightest minds had worked tirelessly to maintain the facade of weakness while secretly developing technologies that would have seemed like magic to the Empire's scientists. Every sensor reading, every intercepted communication, Every piece of visible evidence had been meticulously orchestrated to reinforce the Empire's preconceptions about human capabilities. Meanwhile, deep in classified bunkers beneath Earth's surface, General Patricia Walker coordinated with resistance cells that had been established on every world the Empire had ever conquered. Humanity's intelligence network had been growing steadily for over a decade, and they'd learned that the Empire's greatest weakness was its own overwhelming arrogance. "Sir," interrupted a junior officer, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty, "our long-range sensors are detecting some unusual energy signatures in the outer system. They appear to be, well, they seem to be disappearing and reappearing at random intervals." Kethvar dismissed the report with an irritated wave of his hand, his attention focused on the upcoming battle plans. Sensor ghosts, nothing more. These primitive star systems are notorious for electromagnetic interference and false readings. Solar radiation, asteroid debris, cosmic background noise, all of it creates phantom contacts that confuse inferior scanning equipment. The junior officer persisted, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Admiral, respectfully, these readings are quite consistent. They appear to be following specific patterns and—" "Enough!" Kethvar's roar silenced the entire command center. "I will not have my officers jumping at shadows like frightened younglings. The humans possess no stealth technology, no advanced sensor countermeasures, and certainly no capability to hide significant military assets from Imperial reconnaissance. Continue with the attack plan as scheduled." But even as the Admiral dismissed the concerns of his subordinates, deep in the darkness of space, Admiral Thompson's fleet was already moving into position. Their stealth fields bent light and energy around them like phantoms preparing to strike, their advanced technology rendering them invisible to the Empire's sensors. Hundreds of warships, each one a marvel of human engineering and determination, waited in perfect silence for the moment when they would reveal themselves to a galaxy that had underestimated humanity's potential. The Empire's confidence would soon become their greatest liability. As the 48-hour deadline approached its climax, Admiral Kethvar's mighty fleet moved into Earth's outer system with the inexorable confidence of a force that had never known defeat. His dreadnoughts formed a perfect battle line stretching across thousands of kilometers, each vessel a floating fortress capable of reducing any known planetary defense to molten slag within minutes. The sight was magnificent and terrifying, a display of imperial power that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. "Human fleet approaching, Admiral," reported his sensor operator, a young Altarian whose tentacles trembled with excitement at witnessing what would surely be a historic victory. 12 cruisers, exactly as intelligence predicted. They're actually coming out to meet us in open space." Kethvar's laugh echoed through the command center like thunder, his massive form radiating satisfaction. "The absolute fools. They think their primitive vessels can stand against the might of the Empire in open space combat. This will be over before it truly begins. Perhaps we can make it quick. Their bravery, however misguided, deserves a swift end." Several of his officers joined in the laughter, their various alien features contorting with mirth and anticipation. The idea that these soft-skinned bipeds could pose any meaningful resistance was beyond absurd. The Empire's smallest battle group could have handled this situation with ease. But as the pathetic human ships approached, maintaining their formation with what appeared to be desperate courage, something extraordinary began to happen. The empty space around the Empire's fleet started to shimmer and distort, like heat waves rising from molten metal, or the surface of water disturbed by some massive creature moving beneath. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice carried a growing note of confusion and concern. "I'm detecting some highly unusual energy signatures appearing throughout our operational zone. These readings they're massive, sir. And they're everywhere." Lieutenant Commander Vraktal, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward over his console, his scaled features creased with concentration. "Sir, these energy patterns don't match anything in our databases. They're unlike any known propulsion system or weapon signature we've encountered." Suddenly, as if reality itself was being torn apart and rewoven, the darkness of space erupted with brilliant light as hundreds upon hundreds of human vessels simultaneously dropped their stealth fields. The Empire's fleet, arranged in what they had believed was an impregnable battle formation, found itself completely surrounded by a force that outnumbered them 3-1. Ships that seemed to materialize from the very fabric of space itself like vengeful spirits emerging from some technological underworld. The sight was so shocking, so completely impossible according to everything the Empire believed about human capabilities, that several junior officers actually gasped aloud. These weren't the primitive, cobbled-together vessels they had expected. These were sleek, deadly warships that seemed to bend light around their hulls, their weapon arrays glowing with energies that defied Imperial understanding of physics. This is impossible, Kethvar whispered, his 4 massive arms trembling as he stared at the tactical display that now showed his fleet surrounded by contacts that shouldn't exist. Our scouts reported. Our intelligence confirmed. Your scouts reported exactly what we wanted them to report, Admiral, came a calm, measured voice over the communication channel. The main screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Thompson standing on the bridge of a vessel that looked like it had been forged from starlight and human determination. His weathered face showed no trace of fear, only the quiet confidence of a man who had spent 15 years preparing for this exact moment. This is Admiral James Thompson of the Terran Defense Force, the human continued, his voice carrying across space to every ship in both fleets. You are surrounded and outgunned by a factor of 3-1. Your fleet is trapped within our engagement envelope, and your faster-than-light capabilities have been neutralized. I strongly suggest you surrender immediately and spare your crew's unnecessary casualties. Commander Mackenzie's Shadow Strike materialized less than a kilometer from the Empire's flagship, its weapons arrays locked onto critical systems with surgical precision. Admiral Thompson, this is Shadow Strike. All stealth units are in position and ready. The Empire's fleet is caught in a perfect tactical envelope. They have nowhere to run. The Empire's most advanced sensors, finally penetrating the incredible stealth technology that had hidden the human fleet, began revealing the true scope of what they faced. Battle cruisers the size of small cities, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that seemed to bend reality itself. Massive carriers launching endless wings of fighters that moved through space with impossible grace and speed. Destroyers armed with weapons that defied every known law of physics, their energy signatures reading off the scales of Imperial measurement systems. This cannot be happening, Kethvar repeated, his voice barely above a whisper as his worldview crumbled around him. How did you hide such a massive fleet? How did our intelligence fail so completely? Admiral Thompson's smile was neither cruel nor mocking. It was the expression of a species that had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage with authority that could not be ignored. Admiral Kethvar, you made the same fatal mistake that every bully throughout history has made. You assumed that because we appeared weak and primitive, we actually were weak and primitive. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first learned of the Empire's existence, and we've used every one of those years wisely. Despite the overwhelming shock of discovering the true magnitude of the human fleet, Admiral Kethvar's warrior pride and lifetime of military conditioning refused to accept the possibility of surrender. His massive frame straightened on the command throne, for arms spreading wide in a gesture of defiant determination. The Empire had never retreated, never surrendered, and he would not be the first admiral to break that sacred tradition. All ships, implement attack pattern Omega. Kethvar's roar echoed through the command center with desperate authority. Show these upstart primates what happens when they dare to defy the eternal might of the Zephyrian Empire. For the glory of the Emperor. The response was immediate and devastating. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts opened fire with their primary plasma cannon arrays, weapons so powerful they could reduce asteroids to constituent atoms, capable of melting through planetary crusts like heated knives through soft butter. Streams of contained stellar fire lanced across the void, each beam carrying enough destructive energy to power an entire star system. But the human fleet was already moving, and their response defied everything the Empire thought they knew about space combat. Instead of the lumbering, predictable maneuvers typical of most galactic navies, the human ships flowed through space with an almost organic grace that seemed to mock the fundamental laws of inertia and momentum. Evasive maneuvers, all ships, Commander Mackenzie's voice cut through the tactical channel as his destroyer Shadow Strike danced between the massive energy beams with impossible agility. The ship twisted and rolled through three-dimensional space in patterns that would have liquefied any normal crew, but Mackenzie's people had been enhanced with cybernetic implants and genetic modifications that allowed them to withstand forces that would kill ordinary humans. All vessels, return fire. Mackenzie commanded, his enhanced reflexes processing tactical data at superhuman speeds. Show them what 15 years of preparation can accomplish. The human response was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered in their centuries of galactic conquest. Instead of the crude kinetic weapons and primitive energy systems they had expected, the human ships unleashed a storm of devastation that seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality itself. Quantum torpedoes phased through Imperial shields as if the defensive barriers didn't exist, their exotic matter warheads detonating directly inside enemy hull sections. Plasma cannons fired bursts of contained stellar cores, each shot equivalent to a miniature supernova. Most terrifying of all, some human ships appeared to be mounting weapons that manipulated gravity itself, creating localized space-time distortions that crushed Imperial vessels like tin cans in the grip of an invisible giant. "Admiral!" shouted Kethvar's weapons officer, his voice cracking with disbelief and growing panic. "Their defensive systems are not just absorbing our plasma fire, they're somehow redirecting it back at us. Our own weapons are being turned against our fleet." The technological disparity was becoming horrifyingly apparent with each passing second. The Empire's advanced targeting systems, refined through centuries of warfare, couldn't maintain locks on the human fighters that swarmed through space around the larger vessels. These weren't ordinary pilots flying conventional spacecraft, they were something entirely new. Pilot Lieutenant Marcus Johnson pulled his fighter through a maneuver that bent space around his craft, his enhanced nervous system interfacing directly with his ship's quantum processors. The connection between man and machine was so complete that the fighter responded to his thoughts faster than any mechanical control system could function. "Ghost leader to all fighter wings," he called out over the tactical network, his voice steady despite pulling forces that would have killed an unenhanced human. "The Empire's point defense systems can't track our movement patterns. We're operating beyond their technological comprehension. All units, begin precision attack runs on their capital ship's critical systems." The human fighters moved through the battlefield like a plague of mechanical angels, their exotic propulsion systems allowing them to accelerate, decelerate, and change direction in ways that violated everything the Empire understood about space combat. Their weapons, scaled-down versions of the devastating systems mounted on the larger ships, targeted critical systems with surgical precision. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when several Imperial vessels, recognizing the hopelessness of their situation, attempted to retreat from the engagement zone. "Sir," reported the sensor operator on Kethvar's flagship, his voice thick with despair, "jump drives are completely non-functional across the entire fleet. They're somehow jamming our faster-than-light capabilities. We can't escape." Admiral Thompson's calm voice cut through all frequencies, reaching every ship in both fleets. "That's correct, Admiral Kethvar. We learned long ago that the key to victory in space combat isn't just superior firepower. It's ensuring that your enemy cannot retreat to fight another day, gather reinforcements, or warn others of your capabilities." The technological trap was closing around the Empire's forces like the jaws of some cosmic predator, and they were beginning to understand that they faced not just a hidden fleet, but an entirely new form of warfare. As the battle raged with increasing ferocity, Admiral Kethvar's once mighty fleet was being systematically dismantled with surgical precision that bordered on the obscene. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication and technological superiority that suggested they had been studying Imperial warfare for decades, dissecting every strategy, analyzing every weakness, and preparing countermeasures for every possible scenario. The command center of the Dominion's Edge had transformed from a monument to Imperial confidence into a chamber of barely controlled panic. Warning klaxons wailed continuously as damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. Ships that had conquered star systems were being carved apart by weapons that seemed to exist outside the normal boundaries of physics. "This is beyond impossible," Kethvar roared, his four massive arms gesticulating wildly, as he watched his tactical display show contact after contact winking out of existence. How can these primitive creatures possess such devastating technology? Our intelligence reports showed crude vessels and inferior weapons systems. Commander Yixdal's multiple eyes darted frantically between data streams, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm that betrayed absolute terror. Admiral, I believe we have been the victims of the most elaborate deception in galactic history. Every piece of intelligence we gathered, every sensor reading, every reconnaissance report, all of it was false. The humans have been feeding us exactly what they wanted us to see. The truth was even more devastating than the alien commander could comprehend. Humanity had not simply been preparing for war. They had been preparing for this specific war, against this specific enemy, using intelligence gathered through the most sophisticated espionage network the galaxy had ever seen. Every captured Imperial vessel had been studied down to the molecular level, every tactical doctrine analyzed by supercomputers that could process information faster than biological minds could comprehend, every weakness identified and exploited with ruthless efficiency. Captain Rodriguez, monitoring the battle from Earth's heavily fortified command center deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, felt a mixture of pride and profound sorrow as he watched the destruction unfold. 15 years of preparation, he murmured to Captain Vasquez, his voice heavy with the weight of what humanity had accomplished. 15 years of our brightest minds working in absolute secrecy, developing technologies that the Empire's greatest scientists couldn't even imagine in their wildest theoretical frameworks. The human fleet's weapons were indeed beyond Imperial understanding, representing quantum leaps in scientific development that had been achieved through a combination of desperate necessity and human ingenuity. Quantum entanglement cannons could strike targets across vast distances instantaneously, their exotic particles maintaining coherent connection regardless of space-time barriers. Temporal displacement fields could slow enemy projectiles to a virtual standstill, making even the fastest Imperial weapons appear to move through thick liquid. Most terrifying of all were the nanite swarms, microscopic machines that could disassemble enemy vessels at the molecular level, reducing kilometer-long dreadnoughts to their component atoms within minutes. "Sir," reported Commander Mackenzie from the bridge of his destroyer, his enhanced senses tracking multiple Imperial vessels simultaneously, "the Empire's flagship is altering course dramatically. They appear to be attempting a desperate ramming attack on the Invisible Hand. Kethvar is going for a suicide run." The Imperial Admiral had indeed reached the breaking point of rational thought. With over two-thirds of his fleet destroyed or disabled, his remaining vessels trapped within an inescapable tactical envelope, and facing weapons that seemed to mock the fundamental laws of physics, Kethvar had abandoned all pretense of strategic thinking. His massive dreadnought accelerated toward the human flagship with the desperate fury of a cornered predator. "All remaining ships, follow my lead." Kethvar's voice echoed across Imperial frequencies, crackling with madness and rage. "If we cannot defeat them with superior tactics, we will show them the true meaning of Imperial courage. Ramming speed, for the glory of the Empire." Admiral Thompson's response was delivered with the calm authority of a man who had anticipated every possible scenario. "Negative, Commander Mackenzie. There will be no martyrdom today. Activate the gravity well generators immediately. Let's demonstrate what happens when primitive tactics meet advanced physics." The space around the Imperial flagship suddenly distorted in ways that violated every known law of celestial mechanics. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as artificial gravity wells, more powerful than those generated by neutron stars, materialized around Kethvar's dreadnought. The massive vessel, designed to withstand the rigors of interstellar warfare, found itself caught in gravitational forces so intense that its hull began to buckle and compress under stresses that exceeded its structural tolerances. "This is your final warning, Admiral Kethvar." Thompson's voice echoed across all communication channels, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Surrender immediately and order your remaining vessels to stand down, or watch your entire fleet be crushed by forces that exist far beyond your technological comprehension." The Battle of Seoul lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. A time span that would be remembered throughout galactic history as the moment when the established order of the universe fundamentally changed forever. When the last Imperial weapon fell silent, the mighty Zephyrian Empire had lost 73 of its 87 vessels, with the remainder so catastrophically damaged they couldn't mount a credible threat against a squadron of human shuttles. Admiral Kethvar, his flagship barely intact and held together by emergency force fields, found himself transported aboard the Invisible Hand under a flag of truce he had been forced to request. The human ship's interior was a marvel of technology that seemed to blend organic curves with mechanical precision, creating an environment that felt both alien and strangely welcoming. The corridors hummed with energy that his sensors couldn't identify, and the very air seemed to shimmer with possibilities that defied Imperial understanding of physics. "You're probably wondering how we accomplished all of this," Admiral Thompson said, gesturing for the defeated alien commander to take a seat in what appeared to be a conference room that could accommodate multiple species. The chamber's walls displayed holographic star charts showing the current positions of human fleets throughout known space, fleets that officially hadn't existed mere hours ago. Kethvar's voice was barely a whisper, his four arms hanging limply at his sides in a gesture of complete defeat. "The technology, the ships, the weapons, everything we witness today should be impossible according to every scientific principle we understand. How did your species advance so far so quickly?" Thompson's weathered face showed neither triumph nor cruelty, only the quiet satisfaction of a man who had seen his life's work reach its intended conclusion. "The answer is elegantly simple, Admiral. We learned from you, and from every species you conquered, every world you enslaved, every tactical doctrine you employed over centuries of galactic domination." The truth was staggering in its implications. While the Empire had dismissed humanity as primitive and unworthy of serious consideration, human agents had been infiltrating every conquered world, learning from survivors, gathering intelligence, and most importantly, studying the preserved knowledge of dozens of advanced civilizations that the Empire had destroyed. Each fallen species had contributed something to humanity's rapid technological advancement. Engineering principles, scientific theories, cultural innovations that had been synthesized into something greater than the sum of its parts. But the technological leap, Kethvar protested, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what he was learning. Those weapons, those defensive systems, they're centuries beyond anything the Empire has ever encountered. They operate on principles that our greatest scientists would consider theoretical impossibilities. Thompson nodded slowly, his expression becoming more serious. "That's because we didn't just prepare for war, Admiral. We prepared for evolution. Every human serving in that fleet represents a new step in our species' development. Our pilots have been genetically and cybernetically enhanced to think at the speed of quantum computers. Our engineers can interface directly with their ship systems through neural implants that merge consciousness with artificial intelligence. Our scientists have unlocked secrets of reality that most species wouldn't discover for millennia." The implications were terrifying for anyone who understood what they meant for the future balance of galactic power. If this was what humans could accomplish in 15 years of focused preparation, what would they be capable of in 50 years? In 100? The very concept of technological limitation seemed meaningless when applied to a species that could advance at such an unprecedented rate. "What happens now?" Kethvar asked, his voice carrying the weight of a civilization that suddenly found itself obsolete. Thompson's smile held neither malice nor pity. It was the expression of a species that had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage with authority that could never again be questioned. "Now, Admiral, the Empire learns what it means to coexist with humanity as equals rather than attempting to dominate us as subjects. We are not conquerors like your people have been for centuries. We are liberators. Every world you've enslaved, every species you've oppressed, every civilization you've ground beneath the boot of imperial tyranny, they're all about to learn that the age of empire domination is finally over." As news of the Battle of Seoul spread across the galaxy through quantum communication networks, the established order began to crumble with stunning rapidity. The primitive humans had not just defeated the most powerful military force in known space, they had revealed themselves as the most technologically advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen. More importantly, they had demonstrated that they were willing to use that overwhelming power not for conquest and subjugation, but for liberation and justice. In the months that followed, Human fleets appeared throughout imperial space with clockwork precision, but not as invaders bent on conquest. They came as liberators, offering freedom to worlds that had known only oppression for generations. Slave colonies found themselves independent for the first time in centuries. Conquered species discovered that the humans were offering them something the Empire had never provided: genuine alliance based on mutual respect, technological sharing, and the radical concept that all sentient life possessed inherent value and dignity. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of empire was ending. The age of humanity and true galactic civilization had begun.